Welcome back, everybody. Episode 3 of Season 2 of One Piece. Just finished it. And I gotta be honest, this one was better than Episode 2. I feel like this episode really got back to the spirit of what One Piece is, even though it is different enough from the manga and anime adaptation. But there are some things I want to point out, some things I wasn't really hyped about, but there are some things that I thought were really great. So let's go ahead and dive into it. We start out with Zoro reliving his fight with Mihawk on the ship. Now that's not something that happens in the manga, but it feels like something Zoro might do. He might relive a fight and learn and train from it, although Zoro doesn't feel like someone who would go back and constantly dwell on a single fight. Yes, the Mihawk fight shook him and he knew he had to get better, and so he's always challenging to get better than Mihawk. But I don't necessarily know if this was something he would do, but it didn't feel out of place for him. What bothered me about him seeing Mihawk is Mihawk talking to him, and that's not really who Mihawk is, because he keeps showing up throughout the episode. And we know later on, after everything that happens on Sabaody Archipelago, Zoro has to essentially prove himself and then beg Mihawk for help in training, because Mihawk is not the kind to offer advice the way that the one in his mind does. Now, I understand this is Zoro's version of him in his mind, but you still want to present the character in a way that feels true to the character, although I did like the whole frog and a well thing. That was great. Outside of that, I don't know really how I felt about it. I didn't think it was off too much, but let's go ahead and move on. The one thing I did think was weird was Nami was surprised by the weather. Now, it made sense about the log pose in the last episode, because in the manga and the anime, she didn't know what a log pose was. It was a completely new thing to her. It's something that's kind of new to everybody, but she was well versed on the weather patterns moving into the Grand Line. She's the one that warns everybody else about how quickly everything changes, and yet she's the one who's surprised by the changes. It doesn't feel like a huge difference, but at the same time, it did kind of take a little bit away from that. Then, of course, we have Mr. Nine trying to coax Zoro into letting him free so they can fight or whatever. It's a fun moment, though I did feel like Zoro was a little too invested in that, although he did do the very Zoro thing, which was like, nice try, you're not going to trick me. That was a great little moment. Then we cut to this scene of Luffy questioning Vivi, or sorry, Miss Wednesday. Again, these are completely spoiler reviews, but you find out by the end of the episode it's Vivi. He's questioning her, but he's talking about just getting to know you, I trust you, and all this stuff, and that feels more like Luffy than the last episode. This exchange is very strange, but it didn't feel unlike Luffy. It did feel kind of unlike the situation. But that's okay, because what ends up happening next is we finally arrive on Whiskey Peak, and of course Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine escape, very much like the manga, dip into the water, they're gone. Well, they show up on Whiskey Peak, and everybody's excited to see them. It's very much like the manga, very fun. I did want to take some time to point out, they're wearing different outfits, obviously. One thing that the live action has done that the manga and anime don't do is, because obviously if you're going to draw a character, you're going to draw them wearing essentially the same thing most of the time, though we do know the clothing the Straw Hats wear changes each arc. So it has been kind of interesting to see them allow them to have different wardrobe, but stuff that doesn't feel out of place. And a lot of it is based on things like color spreads and other stuff before manga chapters. Luffy's does feel a little over the top, the baseball jersey thing, but honestly, I thought it was super cool, so I'm not going to complain about that much. But that was great. So they get everybody there. They're hanging out at the bar. They're having some fun. Then they retell the Laboon story, and it's just a reminder that episode 2 was not the best episode. How they rehash what happened with Laboon, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel comfortable, but it's a quick line in this episode, and then we move on. We're good there. Something that I thought was interesting is I felt like the last couple of episodes they've built up this Nami Sanji repertoire where Sanji really dotes on her, which is appropriate, but it seems like he has had eyes for other women. And there's kind of a moment of like that here at the start, but then later on, Sanji does go back to Sanji. We actually get the Sanji that we're used to, where he's showing off at the bar for the girls, and then the girls invite him up to the room, and he's overly excited, and all of his reason just completely goes out of his mind. He drags Usopp into it. So at least that started to feel more like Sanji. I was worried they were just going to have him be that way for Nami, and then of course Vivi now that she's there, and Robin, which I didn't even know if they would do that for them, but hey, at least we got to see Sanji be like Sanji. There's actually a really fun moment with everybody celebrating with Usopp, where he's playing darts, and his thing is, I've never played darts before. I guess I'm really good at this, and he's trying to play it off, because we didn't get that moment in season 1 when he fires the cannon and accidentally hits the giant rock formation, and because we also didn't get Johnny and Yosaku, and that's a whole different thing. But it felt like fun. It felt like Usopp realizing, oh look, I can do a thing. I didn't know I could do that, but hey, look, I'm doing it. So that was a fun moment for Usopp. But then there's this really weird drunk confession about the cactus being dangerous. Don't go up there. So they've changed everything here. So the way it happens in the manga, everybody enjoys themselves. Luffy eats himself into a stupor, and then of course Sanji and Usopp drink themselves into sleep. So everybody's sleeping. Nami fakes being drunk, kind of like she did here, to hustle people, but she faked it so she could go steal all of the treasure that's on the island. And then Zoro faked it because he was suspicious of everyone on the island. He kind of had this feeling they were Baroque works, and it does later on in the fight in the manga and the anime version, where he's like, yeah, you guys are Baroque works, I know you are, you tried to recruit me. And that's how that goes. So we have that. It's very different. So Sanji and Usopp get dragged upstairs and they get captured by some girls. Oh, they're trying to chase girls, and that's a thing. Zoro and Luffy have this moment, and Zoro's very doubtful of himself. That didn't really feel like Zoro. Zoro's moment, he said, I will never lose again, when he was on the boat with Mihawk, and Zoro has not lost since then. People go, oh, well, what about the Kuma fight? That's different. It wasn't a 1v1 Zoro. He hasn't lost to a single swordsman in the entirety of this series since then. So doubtful Zoro didn't feel right in this moment, but it didn't take me completely out of it. It still felt way more like One Piece than episode 2, but then things start to kind of pick up. So Luffy heads down the street to this bakery. There's some weird moments there. So Igaram shows up talking, and then Miss Wednesday shows up. They lull Luffy into a sleep instead of him eating himself to sleep into a stupor, and essentially the two of them hash out their plan to steal the Mary and everything while they're there. That's not really how this happens, because Igaram is part of the fight against the Straw Hats before everything goes down. Same with Vivi. She is involved in the fight against Zoro before everybody finds out that she's Princess Vivi and everything happens. Something I noticed, so once this fight starts, real quick, Nami finds the Tulip Pirates dead. The guy explains himself and he talks about burying them. We did get to see the gravestones on the cactuses. I thought that part was great. They did a close-up. It was good. It kind of gave you that ominous feeling, though by this point we already know what's going on. That moment revealed in the manga is the part where you're like, oh, that's trouble. Here, it wasn't as much, but I was glad we got to see it. It was really great that they kept that in. Then Nami fights the guy. It does feel like they're trying to involve Nami in the fights a little more here, because she didn't always get involved in the fights, especially early on. And even now, there's moments where she is involved, moments where she's not. What's great about the Elbaf arc is she and Zeus have actually done some fighting. So I do feel like they're trying to get Nami a little more involved. Didn't feel wrong, though. It was strange that this is how she finds out, because it's her trying to loot things, finding out later, while Zoro's fighting the 100. And so Zoro fakes being drunk, obviously, and then two guys come to kill Zoro. He kills them. He and Nami meet. They have a conversation. Nami's like, be careful. Zoro says, okay. This is where the episode went over the top in a great way. Zoro versus 100 Baroque work agents, and they kept it in. They did it. It was so much fun. It's a little different from the manga, but not super different. But it was great to see Zoro do all of that work. McKinney do everything. Great work to the choreographer and the videographer who staged this so well. Because one thing I've noticed with choreography, fight scenes where it's one guy versus a large group, and you see this with like The Matrix, that's the biggest one most people point out, is a crowd just stands around and watches one guy fight, and they take their turns. Like, when's it my turn to get punched in the face? They didn't do that here. I feel like they really planned it. There's so many obstacles in this bar area as people run around it through that they're kind of funneling in towards Zoro. And it felt a little more natural than some fight scenes. I thought it was a lot of fun. This was the moment of the episode, was him fighting these 100, and he starts counting. And then it got really weird because Mihawk showed up again in Zoro's brain. Are we going to get Mihawk in every episode Zoro fights now, trying to convince Zoro that he's not ready for the Grand Line? It was just as weird as the whole Garp thing in episode 2. I understand it. If you're going to get a big-time actor, someone to do this role, they have to show up more than they really have in the past. But I don't know. There's something about Zoro just constantly daydreaming about Mihawk. On the one hand, it feels right because that's his goal, is to beat Mihawk and be the world's greatest swordsman. On the other hand, it feels weird because why does he need a pep talk from Mihawk before he does the thing he's always done? Sorry. So what's great about this fight? In the manga, Zoro is described as being a wild animal. His presence is overwhelming. His attacks, his strikes, they feel furious. And that's what this feels like. And not like an animal who's been caged and cornered, but an animal who's hunted. And that was very important for the way Zoro fights. This was great. We got to see him use Kitetsu and Urashiba. Kitetsu also gets stuck in the wood. That's a fun moment where he's like, he looks at the sword. He tells the sword, good sword, earlier. Then after it gets stuck in the wood and he finally pries it out, he kind of looks at it like, are you trying to get me killed here? So that was fun. I was really happy to see a good Zoro fight. Again, the Mihawk thing is really weird. The choreography was perfect though. Then we're going to cut to Luffy waking up in the bakery. And he wakes up when they talk about stealing the Mary. And we get serious Luffy again. He's not overly goofy, but I understand it. He should be serious here because, wait, you're not taking my ship. But it felt, I don't know, it felt off. It felt a little forced in that moment, but it was super quick and it went on. Then when he's holding onto the truck, that felt very Luffy. That was funny. He stops it. They flip out. That whole part is a lot of fun. The thing that I'm a little disappointed with, and I guess it's just disappointing for me as a fan, because what happens in the manga is Luffy wakes up and he's like, Zoro, you hurt all these people who have been so nice to us. And he fights Zoro. And they go back and forth. They have this big fight. Everyone's confused. Mr. Wednesday, who's now been revealed as Vivi when Mr. Five and Miss Valentine show up. That's a fun moment. And they get involved, and then Mr. Five and Miss Valentine try to fight Luffy and Zoro, and they're like, butt out, this is our fight. The whole point, though, is Zoro's trying to tell, like, Luffy, these people are assassins. Stop. I'm doing what we need to protect us. And Luffy is just like, how dare you hurt these people? And then when Luffy finds out the truth, he's like, Zoro, why didn't you just say that? And Zoro's like, I tried to tell you that. It's a great moment. It's a lot of fun. I kind of wish they'd kept that in, but I understand why they would cut it out. Again, not everything's going to be one-to-one. That feels very One Piece to keep it in. It felt un-One Piece to take it out, but it felt very One Piece to put the whole weird cupcake ice cream truck chase thing in. That was kind of fun. Then, while Zoro's fighting, he breaks into a room where Sanji and Usopp are both tied up. The girls have tied them up. They're getting ready to essentially kill the two of them, and then Zoro takes them out. The only issue I had here with this one, I understand Sanji being tied up because Sanji has a code. You don't really find this code out until later on when he's trying to fight Khalifa in Eni's lobby, but Sanji will not fight a woman. He will not lay hands on a woman at all. It goes against his moral code, so Sanji's obviously not going to fight back against these girls, especially in a vulnerable position. When he's around girls, his guard goes down, his mind is out. It did make him look a little weak, but he got his one-up moment on Zoro in season 1. This is kind of Zoro's one-up moment on him. I kind of hope these little back and forths happen, but Sanji wasn't upset that Zoro beat the girls. Anytime that a male character hurts a female character in any capacity in the manga, Sanji's very upset, even if they're villains. He's kind of like, you can't do that, except for Big Mom. That's different. I don't know that Sanji really views Big Mom as a woman, or at least a woman that he would be interested in. It's kind of like when they all find out that Granny Kokoro is a mermaid, and they're like, I wish I could forget everything. But Sanji not having a reaction did feel a little strange to me. But Mr. Five and Miss Valentine, they look great. Jem, Mr. Five, his power is gross. Is very gross. Is very in a fun way. They kept it. I'm glad they kept it. I cringe. I don't like nose stuff. But it was fun that they kept it. The bomb looks great. The characters, the actors they got, they look great. That's one thing they've continually done is get actors to play the roles that look great. The costuming looks great. They make these people up to look like the characters are portraying. So they're a lot of fun. We finally got Miss Monday. I know she comes later in the fight. I was kind of worried. There was a part of me that thought they wouldn't do Miss Monday. I'm not entirely sure why I got that feeling, but once she ripped the nun outfit off and she was Miss Monday, that was great. Zoro, of course, beats her by throwing Mr. Nine into her. I do kind of wish they kept that moment where, because she's supposed to be the strongest person on the island physically, where she's trying to crush Zoro's head, but instead Zoro's like laughing and he grabs her and starts squeezing and she's in pain. That would have been a really fun moment. But it's okay that that particular moment wasn't in there because Zoro overpowers her and Mr. Nine at the same time when it looked like he was cornered. So I thought that was okay. Again, Mihawk shows up. Okay. Again, Mihawk is not Zoro's mentor, at least not at this point. And even when he does become his mentor, he doesn't really want to be, but he is. Zoro's proven himself at that point. It feels inorganic here. I get what they're trying to do, though, because honestly, where are you going to fit Mihawk in? The season only goes through Drama Island. During Alabasta, you could get some moments, especially if you end Alabasta and you go to them trying to appoint a new warlord. You get some Mihawk, but you're not going to get a lot of it. And so I kind of feel like that's why some of these characters are here. I still don't know how I feel about Mihawk showing up in Zoro's mind. And then we get to the negotiation and Luffy's just like, yeah, we'll help you. And that's very Luffy. Luffy's like, no, you're in trouble. I like you. I feel like you can be trusted. You fed me. I'll help you out. Then, of course, Nami trying to get a reward. That's very true to who Nami is. It's also what happens in the manga. If I remember correctly, she bargains to get the money first before Luffy agrees. It's actually Nami who's like, whoa, you're a princess? We can save you? All right, let's take you back, get some money. So again, no adaptation is going to be one-to-one, so that's going to be a little swapped. But that part didn't feel out of place. The one thing that they did change right at the end, and I'm kind of okay with it, I'm definitely okay with it, because Igaram in the manga, the way he dies, sorry, spoilers, Igaram's not dead. But the way he dies is he gets blown up by Miss All Sunday as he leaves on a raft dressed like Princess Vivi, trying to distract everyone to think it's him. This gives him a slightly more heroic moment, and it's not as out of place, although I will say, if they had done that, that would have been over the top great. But I didn't dislike the way they did it here. Igaram stands his ground, he gets blown up. Everyone assumes Igaram's dead. Now, I do hope that he does come back later on in Alabasta. He comes back at the very end of the arc. It would feel very strange for him not to, but hey, that's how it goes. Then there's the weird moment. So Miss All Sunday doesn't show up here. Robin is not on Whiskey Peak like it was implied that because she's the one that did the bombing of Igaram's raft. And she tells the Straw Hats when she shows up on their ship, which she does at the very end of this episode. I'm really hopeful, though, that Igaram does come back. But Miss All Sunday wasn't here. Mr. Nine wasn't involved in protecting Vivi and letting her go, which does happen in the manga because they're partners. And Mr. Nine really has a trust and respect for Miss Wednesday. And we see that at the end when he calls out Mr. Five and Miss Valentine. You let them go. The Unluckies are on their way, which we've all seen the Unluckies in the trailer. They look phenomenal. I can't wait to meet them. The next island should be Little Garden, so that's going to be a lot of fun. We'll get to meet the Unluckies there. But there's this moment, though, Mr. Nine actually has what I think is probably the best performance of any of the episodes so far, outside of Ipamatsu in the sword shop. This moment where he calls them out and says, Mr. Zero doesn't like failure, and you two failed. That was great. I also love that he kept using the pinkies, just like the manga. But then Miss Valentine basically crushes his face in. So is he dead now? So for those of you who don't know, in the manga, Mr. 9 is alive. He just gets basically the brakes beaten off of him. And then down the road, he and Miss Monday, they get married, they have a child. It's a cover story in the manga. So for those who don't know, Oda does cover stories to tell the ongoing stories of characters who are no longer part of the main story. So I'm not totally sure how I feel about that. Hopefully Mr. 9 is still alive somewhere, but this is the live action. They're obviously killing more people off. They killed off Mary in season 1, which was very out of place for One Piece because Mary survives in season 1, but here he's murdered. So we'll see what happens. I'm assuming Mr. 9 is dead. There's nothing that can tell me that believes me he's not. I don't believe Igaram is dead, and if they do keep him dead, I feel like that's a poor choice. There's a cool moment where Vivi has the handkerchief from Igaram, and she uses it to tie up her hair, and that's a really fun moment. It's very warm. Then, of course, we get the flowers from the flower fruit, and Miss All Sunday shows up on the ship. So the next episode should start there. That seems like it's going to be a very interesting conversation. It's very interesting in the manga. I'm really excited for that. But we do have to talk about the biggest change in this episode, and one that I am not happy about. No Karu. We don't get Karu. We have got to get Karu. When they get to Alabasta, Karu has to be one of the first characters that Vivi meets up with. Because Karu is integral. I say integral. To me, he is integral to the whole plot. Okay, he's not integral to the plot, but he's integral to the story. Because I love Karu. He is a giant rideable duck. We're not even going to get him on Little Garden with Usopp and everything trying to take out Mr. 5. No Karu. So does this mean we're not going to get the Supersonic Duck Squad? And I know some people go, that's too over the top goofy. No, you are adapting a manga into live action. You got to keep that over the top stuff. And some people are complaining, and their version of complaining is looking at people saying, oh, you don't like the over the top stuff. Just let them be fun. It's like, no, we're upset that people like Karu. And yes, I'm calling him people. Karu is my duck boy. Karu, season 3. Please, because I can't force you, but please put Karu in. I didn't think I was going to get that worked up. But free Karu. That's how we'll end this episode. But yeah, thanks for watching. Glad you were here. Leave a like, share this video. Put in the comments what you thought about episode 3. Any thoughts that you have different from me, things that you noticed that I didn't see. And I'll see you in the next video. And remember, free Karu, my duck boy.